instead of 4. Man. And, of course, when you send off 2 kids, usually you're either left with 0 or maybe 1. And I sent off 2 kids, and I still left with 2 kids. But, that's all right. They're not as needy, I've noticed, as Annalie and Ben are. And I love Annalie and Ben, but they're not nearly as needy. And Adeline's having the time of her life because she has all the attention right now. And so it's been kind of a good weekend with that. And I know what you're all thinking. It's all been in your head the last week, and I didn't believe it myself, but I did not know that when you're snapping your fingers, you're really just snapping your palm. And I know that was weighing on your minds, and it was been weighing on my mind. I cannot believe that when you're snapping your fingers, you're not snapping your fingers, you're snapping your palm. Did you know that? Yeah, something to think about. Now you're all of you like, when can I start snapping my fingers to see if that's really true? I told that to Ashley on Friday night. She did not believe me. She thought I was a liar. She Googled it. She went to 4 different websites to make sure that I wasn't lying. And it was like 10:30 at night. We're on our way home from dinner. And she's like, there's no way that's true. And I said, yeah, that's true. And so she started snapping her fingers, and she said, sure enough, I was right. She couldn't believe it. She hates to admit that I'm right sometimes. But Ashley did pray that I would be an eloquent speaker today. And so if I'm not an eloquent speaker, well, Ashley didn't pray hard enough. So we'll see how today goes. I'm really nervous because Jared Youngkin's in the audience today. He is my homiletics teacher in Bible college, and I have never, ever preached in front of him before or spoken in front of him in any way, shape, or form other than in class for, the 4 minutes that we were allowed, all those years ago. And so I looked at him today. I'm like, oh, man, you're here today? And he's like, oh. And he's like, he thought, like, I didn't want him to be here at all today. Like, and I told him while I'm speaking today. He's like, oh, don't worry about it. Now, we're glad to have the Youngkins with us on a regular basis. It's so good. We've been friends for years, and so it's always nice to see them today. And Brother Boffman's probably wondering, what is he going on for? Just get to the lesson. And so I'll do that, Pastor. I'll try not to embarrass you too much today. So today I wanted to talk about, I don't know if there's just a buzzing in general, Justin, or if it's me or I have the wrong thing, but there's just a constant buzz. When thinking of what I wanted to speak on today, Pastor asked me to speak today or do Sunday school today, and he gave us a few things to choose from. And I thought, I like to talk about leadership and leaders because I think it's an important thing. I think we all need it in our life, and we all in some way or another need to become leaders in our own lives. And so it got me to thinking about some of the names that when you think of leaders, what do you think of? Who do you think of? And these are in no specific order, no, popularity or anything, but I think of people like George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and Douglas MacArthur and George S. Patton and Franklin Roosevelt and Ronald Reagan and Winston Churchill and Tony Blair. And I think about all these people, especially in recent times, that have been great leaders, have led their countries or led their nations in decent ways. And then I even was looking up leaders, and this one guy that I didn't even know about, but this guy named Jack Ma. Have you ever heard of Jack Ma before? Jack Ma is the founder of Alibaba. Have you ever heard of Alibaba before? No, right? So I was talking to Ashley about this. There's a whole different world going on outside of Arizona and even in the United States. There's just communities and there's different people. There's a whole different world going on in different states, and obviously in Asia, where more of the population of the world lives, there is a website or a group called Alibaba. They have a combined revenue that is more than Amazon and eBay combined. They're an online e-commerce place. And this guy, Jack Ma, started this multi-billion-dollar company out of his apartment in 1999 with 19 people. And now the guy's worth $50 billion. And I'm like, wow, that's really impressive. And I said, that had to take leadership. You can't take that away from him. He had to lead somehow in some way to make this company grow to what it is today. And here he is, 18 years later, he's worth $50 billion with a website. And Ashley's like, that doesn't exist. And she Googled Alibaba, and then she's like, oh, sure enough, it's just online e-commerce website. And so I thought, wow, those are secular leaders that I think that have done mighty and big things, and we can consider, hey, those are a lot of great accomplishments that we can think of that in those type of leadership roles. But then there's others that I think of, and again, no in certain order. I think of Kenneth Haney and David Bernard and Paul Mooney and Jerry Jones and Ronnie Mullins and Tommy Hudson and J.T. Pugh and T.F. Tenney and Gary Hogan and Nona Freeman and Howard A. Goss and Vesta Mangan and James Kilgore and T.W. Barnes and Anthony Mangan and people like Brother Boffin and Pastor Boffin. And I wrote that last night. I didn't just come up with that. I wrote it down. So, but I think of the many leaders that we have in the church. And Howard A. Goss was the first general superintendent of the UPCI when it formed in 1945, and I think about all that went into that, because you're combining two different organizations into one, and each organization had a leader, and yet somehow they had to choose one leader over the other to be the main leader of the new organization. And Howard A. Goss came in, and he led the UPCI for those first number of years and brought the church together to what it is today. And then, of course, we've had all these other great leaders that have come around. But no doubt that is a class of leaders. When you think of Kenneth Haney, you think of a leader. You think of leadership. You think of David Bernard, you think of leadership. You think of Pastor Boffin, I think of leadership and honor and integrity. I think of these people because when we showed up 5 years ago, there were 60 of us, or what was it, 5 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, there was like 55, 60 of us, and now we've grown to a really good-sized church, and that's not just because it happened. That's because we have good leaderships in Pastor and Sister Boffin, and so leadership is important. Leadership, and they realize that it's not just them, it's the leadership that they've built around them, and I appreciate that, and I honor that, and so I wanted to talk about that a little bit today, talk about some people in the Bible and talk about some of the traits, but ultimately we have to be those leaders. We have to be a leader. And doesn't mean that you have a position or a title within the church, but you need to be a leader in your household. You need to be a leader at your work and at your school. And I want to talk about some of that today. God has chosen throughout time to put leaders into the church, and today's world urgently needs excellent leaders. We do need excellent leaders. We look at President Trump, and a lot of us aren't impressed with what he's doing and encouraged by what he's doing, but nevertheless, he is our leader. He is the one that represents our nation, so to speak. And so we are in need of excellent leaders, and I think of no better place to raise up excellent leaders than in the church of Christ, that in the church, in the body of God, that to lead up, to bring up leaders into the way that they need to be. Businesses pay incredible sums of money to secure CEOs with leadership skills. I mean, millions of dollars. And I was reading yesterday that a lot of these guys, they don't take a salary. They take like a $1 a year salary, but they get these crazy, amazing stock options that are worth billions and billions of dollars, and they get paid these stock options because they need this person's leadership skills. People get put on board of trustees just because of their name, just because they know that if something is said by them that it's going to happen, that it's going to get done. I mean, these people get paid ridiculous amounts of money. I think our pastors in the UPCI are probably very vastly underpaid. And I won't have anybody say amen, but I think they are underpaid easily. They have more quality traits than some of the secular CEOs in this country. But the leadership void should not exist in the church. The leadership void should not exist. There could be a leadership void in the nation, but in the church congregation, in our church, there shouldn't be a void of leadership. And I'm proud to say that we really don't have that void, but there's always room for more. There's always room for somebody else to step up. There's always room for somebody else to say, hey, I can do this and I can help here. And so I want to talk about a little bit some of that today. But God places us under leaders. In order to become a good leader, you have to be placed under a leader, and you have to be placed under a good leader. You could be placed under a bad leader, and you're probably going to end up being a bad leader. But if you get placed under a good leader, you're probably going to end up being a good leader. And the first essential step toward a person's leadership development is for God to place him under the authority of another. The specifics of how God develops individuals varies, but in every case, the common threads of submission, learning, and testing are always present. So you may not get grown up the same way. You may not go through the same paces, so to speak, that somebody else went through to get to their position in life or get to the place where they're at. But no matter who you're under, God will figure that out. God will have you do different things. And I remember growing up, when I first got into the church, Randy Granis was my pastor in Downey, California, and it was just him and our youth leaders, and that was pretty much the leaders of the church. And so what they built into me was just do. Whatever we ask you to do, just do it. And so we're like, okay, so if we had to mop the floors, we mop the floors. If we had to clean the bathrooms, we clean the bathrooms. And we didn't grudge about it. We didn't get upset about it. But it was learning to respect the authority that was in our lives. It was learning to be submissive to the people that were in our lives. And so it didn't matter what he asked us to do. But he told me, he just asked me. He didn't necessarily tell, but he said, hey, can you do this? Brother Andrew, can you do this? Yeah, I can do that, Pastor. Or whatever. Anybody in the youth group, can you do this? Can you do this? Yes, I'll do that. It's not a big deal. Whatever you need. And that's how he places us under people to help us develop those leadership skills. I'm blessed to have the people in my life and the elders in my life that they can talk to me, they can speak to me freely and tell me. And just read me the riot act if they really feel like it's necessary, and I'll listen to that, and I'll do what I can to make myself better, because ultimately it's not about me, it's about furthering the kingdom and being a blessing to the ministry. And so when we think about people in leadership in the Bible, one of the people we would think about is Joshua. In Deuteronomy 31:14, Moses is coming to the end of his life. He hasn't been able to see the promised land. They've just been wandering for years in the wilderness because they messed up. And God tells Moses in Deuteronomy 31:14, says, "And the Lord said unto Moses, Behold, thy days approach that thou must die. Call Joshua and present yourselves in the tabernacle of the congregation, that I might give him a charge. And Moses and Joshua went and presented themselves in the tabernacle of the congregation." Now, I wasn't around back then. And I wasn't around when God was talking on a regular basis to people, like just talking and walking and putting man on the ground. I wasn't around, but it had to be really, really interesting to be a part of that. And Joshua is the next person that's going to take over Israel. Not take over, but lead Israel, which isn't an easy responsibility. You have millions of people that you are ultimately going to be responsible for. And God has chosen you, specifically said you are going to lead the next people. You are going to take over after Moses passes away. And in Deuteronomy 31:7, I think, or 31:6, I'm sorry. And this is Moses having a conversation, and I think it was kind of like Moses telling Joshua, look, it's going to be okay. But let's have a conversation, but it's going to be okay. Because taking over 2 million people isn't some easy responsibility, but he says, Be strong and of good courage. Fear not, nor be afraid of them. For the Lord thy God, he is that doth goeth with thee. He will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. And Moses called unto Joshua and said unto him in the sight of all Israel, Be strong and of good courage, for thou must go with this people unto the land which the Lord hath sworn unto their fathers to give them, and thou shalt cause them to inherit it. And I don't know. I don't know what it's like when somebody takes over a new church, what the stress or the overwhelming situations that you may be facing. I don't know what that feels like. And the churches are usually like, 150, 200, 300 people. But to take over a church of 2 million people just like that, I can't imagine that you're like, oh, I got this, no problem, no sweat, man. I just get through this every day without a problem. I mean, he had to have some nerves, but God had already foreseen that this was going to happen. He put him under a great leader to learn from. And God had found in Joshua characteristics that would make him a great leader, and in doing so, he was made this new leader of Israel after the death of Moses. And so what are some of those traits? Well, we have a great book in the Bible called Proverbs, and he had many, many traits that would allow him to be this good leader. And I'm going to go through some of those today. Wisdom would probably be the first one. In Proverbs chapter 8, verse 15, it says, Be me, wisdom. Kings reign and rulers make laws that are just. Kings reign and rulers make laws that are just. Proverbs 20:8 says, When a king sits on his throne to judge, he winnows out all evil with his eyes. All leaders must have God's wisdom. Jesus himself was filled with God's wisdom and grace in Luke chapter 2, verse 40. Wisdom is different than mere knowledge. The wise leader can see farther than others. His spiritual discernment is what sets him apart as God's leader. The church today is in dire need of wise leaders. You can have a master's degree, a bachelor's, master's, doctor's degree. That does not make you wise in any way, shape, or form. It just makes you book smart. But it does not give you wisdom to deal with people. It does not give you wisdom. That's why even when a psychiatrist or a doctor, when they get their master's degree, get their doctor's degree, they don't get to go and just start, working on people. They're then, again, a student for years so they can learn how to properly make wise decisions in an emergency situation. But you can't just because you went to school. That's why there is no class on how to be a dad. There is no class on how to be a mom. Because you can pass the class because you pass all the tests, and you'll be one of the worst brothers in the world, worst fathers in the world, because you can't make wise decisions. Wisdom comes with age. Wisdom comes with experience. Wisdom comes with all that, and Joshua had that. And we need that. We need to have wisdom. And one man wisely said that God loves everyone equally, but he does not trust everyone equally. And God may love me just fine, but that doesn't mean he may trust me with the leadership position of over a lot of things, because I may not have that wisdom that I need to get through something. It may not but we should desire that. We should pray for that we would have wisdom. I think Solomon he did it best. God said, hey, you can have anything in the world that you want. What is it that you want from me? When Solomon was named king, he says, God, give me wisdom that I may rule over my people with the right hand. Let me be a wise and just king. And God's like, done. And then because you didn't ask for any of the other stuff, I'll give you all the riches and all the glory because you asked for the right thing. And I think the number one thing we need to have, one of the things we need to have is, I can't say number one because there's like a lot, but one of the things we need to have is wisdom. The second thing is integrity. Proverbs 16:12 says, kings detest wrongdoing, for a throne is established through righteousness. Proverbs 29:4 says, by justice a king gives a country stability, but one who is greedy for bribes tears it down. Personal integrity is demonstrated by who we are and what we do when no one is looking. Who we are when no one is looking is our greatest character that we could have. I need to be me, not only when I'm behind a pulpit or when I'm sitting in the chair in the front row. I have to be the same person I am here and there, that I am at work, that I am at home, that I am at the grocery store. That's my integrity. There's this great book out called Who You Are When No One's Looking by Bill Hybels. He pastors a mega church in Chicago, and he made the analogy, the story one time that you can't always see everything that's going on. And he said one day he was out on a boat. He has a boat, and he's out on the lake, and he's like, man, it's just dragging like it doesn't usually drag like this. And even the boat was beautiful. Boat had just beautiful paint, not a scratch or flaw on it. And what he didn't know, though, is that it had been a few months since he had been on the boat, and he hadn't done anything underneath the water, and there was mussels and clams that are all underneath the bottom of the boat that were slowing it down, causing issues with the rudders and whatnot. And so there are things that I may look pretty today. I got cufflinks on, I got a tie on, I got a nice suit on that I got at the Garment District in LA, like I'm cool, I look good, but there may be other things going on. It's my integrity. It's who I am when no one's looking. We need to be the same person we are here at church as we are at home. And if you aren't a very good person here at church, well, then I hope you find a way to the altar to get that straightened out. But we need to be those people who, when no one's looking, be the same person as we are. And that's a character trait of a leader. Having love, obviously, Proverbs 20:28 says, love and faithfulness keep a king safe. Through love, his throne is made secure. How we love is more important than we know or achieve. And how many of you have heard this adage? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Nobody gives anything in the world. They could care less that you know the Bible, you know a Bible study. They don't care. But how much do you care about them? How much do you love them? How much do you want to pour into them? How much time do you want to spend with them? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so we have to be that loving. I know that's probably something, well, that's simple, but sometimes people get on our nerves. Sometimes people just rub us the wrong way. And we have to love. We have to love. If we're going to lead, we have to love. We have to be a loving person, a loving father and mother to our children, a loving brother and sister in Christ to the people in the congregation, because we need each other. We ought to be loving towards each other. And so we have to have that kind of attitude. We need to seek good advisors. Proverbs 11:14, for lack of guidance, a nation fails, but many advisors make victory sure. Proverbs 25:4-5, remove the doors from silver, and out comes material for the silversmith. Remove the wicked from the king's presence, and his throne will be established through righteousness. Every effective leader needs advice and seeks advice. The ability to listen to the advice of others is the mark of a great leader. You have to take advice from other people. You have to. You can't say, I can do this on my own. It's just like living for God. You cannot live for God on your own. You can't not ever come to church and say, I'm going to be able to live for Christ all by myself. It's impossible. You need people in your life to speak into you. You need people in your life that can talk to you and give you correction and give you direction and give you that compass that you need sometimes. And you need people that's going to give you good advice. We're doing the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University at my house, and it's been so interesting because I have people from work coming, and we have people from the church coming on Tuesday nights, and so I talk about it all the time at work. I always talk about it at work. I'm always telling, especially the young guys at work, like, you don't go on the truck. Don't go on the truck, the tool truck, because if you go, yeah, amen, John. If you go on the tool truck, the very first thing the guy on the tool truck is going to say, I can get you credit. I can get you credit. Well, how much credit? I can probably get you $6,000 or $7,000, just like that. And I'm like, and these kids, these young people are 19, 20 years old. They're like, okay, because they believe the lie that they have to have good credit. They have to build up their credit somehow so they can buy a house. They're not anywhere. They're probably 8 years away from buying a house, but they have to go $6,000 in debt right off the bat. And I'm like, you don't know. You don't need to go into debt. I work next to a guy. I love him so much. His name's Jesse. I love him so much. And he hears me talk about Dave Ramsey all the time. And one day, our dispatcher was out there, and Dave Ramsey's big. Don't go into debt on anything. You have an emergency account, but emergency savings of $1,000, and after you get out of that, and after you pay off all your debt, then you get 6 months of savings, and you have that in the bank. And so, and I'm telling Jesse, this is what you got to do. This is what you got to get excited about. And Ashley gives me a hard time about that. She's like, you get excited about it, but you hate doing it. I said, I hate this part of it. I hate trying to get out of debt. I hate not being able to buy anything. I hate it. But I can get excited about it and get everybody else excited about it as much as I can. And I'll get you excited because we got to get out of debt. But I was telling this to Jesse one day, and our dispatcher was saying there, he's like, Andrew, that is the biggest load of garbage I've ever heard in my life. I said, what are you talking about? He's like, debt is for rich people. If you want to get out of debt, you have to be rich. I said, what are you talking about? He says, no, that's not like. He's like, you want an emergency fund? You go get a credit card with a $20,000 limit. There's your emergency fund. I'm like, no, that's not, no. Then you're in debt again. You're paying 23% interest. Why would you do that? And he's saying, no, that's just for rich people. And he walked away, and I looked at Jesse and said, that's a lie from hell. Don't you dare believe that. It doesn't matter if you're making $30,000 or you're making $60,000. You can get out of debt. You can do it. And I told him, I try and tell him stories. I said, but don't believe that lie. That you don't, if you got somebody that's bad with money, you don't take advice from a person that's bad with money or who's debt or who's broke. You don't take advice. And same thing, if you want spiritual advice, you don't get spiritual advice from somebody who's not living for God. You don't get spiritual advice from somebody who's not in church. If you want spiritual advice, if you want leadership, good advice, you go to somebody in the church who's living for God, on fire for God, loves God, who can give you good spiritual advice. We have to seek out good advisors. We have to have those people in our lives that will point us in the right direction, tell us what we don't want to hear. Amen. Self-control. Proverbs 28:15 says, like a roaring lion or a charging bear is a wicked man ruling over helpless people. The leader who cannot control himself will not be able to command the respect of those he leads. As a dad, I struggle with this a lot. My kids are not at the age where they require constant attention. They require constant correction. And I feel bad for Ashley because she deals with it way more than I do. And she gets on to me. She's like, man, you just kind of lose it with the kids sometimes. I said, I know that, but I'm not around it all the time. You're around it all the time. Like you got used to it. And I come home from work. The cars don't talk back to me. Cars don't talk back to me. They don't give me lip. They don't cry even when I scratch them, or I don't scratch cars, but I'm just saying. But cars don't talk back to me. They don't talk back to me. They don't give me a hard time, and they may be broken, and they may be stubborn about telling me what's wrong with them, but I'll figure it out, and I'll get them fixed, and then they'll be on their way, and I won't have to see them again. My kids aren't like that. It's daddy, 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 daddy. What? Hi. What? For real? Daddy, daddy, look, what? Annalie's got sunglasses on. She wanted me to see that she had sunglasses on. Daddy, 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 daddy. Bam! What's wrong with you? Wake up. This is, like, what is wrong with you? My kids, we're in the car. Mom, Dad, play Greatest Showman. Play, like, right now, The Greatest Showman. I'm about sick of those songs. Because as soon as we get in the car, when we come to church, Ben knows that we will not listen to Greatest Showman. We're going to listen to Christian music on the way to church. But he knows as soon as we get back in that car and we're on our way home, apparently we're backslidden once we go home in his eyes. Because as soon as we get back in the car, Daddy, Daddy, play the Two Daddies. Because he doesn't know the name of the song, so he just gives me descriptions of what he wants. And we get our phones out and we start playing, because they got to listen to Greatest Showman. But it's like, if you don't play the exact song, then they freak out. And then Adeline, she does it. So self-control. I get it. You guys are like, man, he's freaking out up there. No, but self-control. We have to have self-control. Pastor's had self-control with me. I've done some dumb things. He just laughs. He's like, oh, man. And he's been so kind to me, because I know there's times when he's been like, why did you do that? Or why did you say that thing? And he just comes up to me and he just says, I love you. Don't do that again. I'm like, okay. And he's been real sweet. He didn't plow into me. He didn't make me feel like I was less than dirt or anything like that. He said it very loving. He had self-control. But we have to have self-control if we're going to be in leadership. We have to, because there's going to be people that are going to they won't know how to listen. They won't know how to listen. They're going to aggravate you. They're going to frustrate you. They're going to get you to the point where just do it the way that I want you to do it. But you got to have self-control. You got to realize that there's going to be people in our lives that are going to make us upset. They're going to rub us the wrong way, so to speak. And so we have to be able to have that self-control, because like it says, like a roaring lion or a charging bear is a wicked man ruling over helpless people. If you're just angry and mean all the time, I had a boss The first boss I had when I was here, the biggest jerk. I mean, you came to work, you did not know if you were going to get fired that day for just breathing. You were on eggshells all the time. He had zero self-control. Cuss you out, yell and scream at you. And talk about me being stressed out. I had a baby on the way. Me and Ashley were living in the penthouse at the church, so we're trying to figure out that kind of situation, and we didn't have any money, and this guy's like just acting. Every day for like 3 months, I thought I was going to get fired. I was living under that kind of stress because this guy had no self-control. And he wouldn't necessarily blow up on me, but he may blow up on the guy that was working next to me, just start yelling and screaming at him. And that was the worst type of leader I've ever been, one of the worst managers I've ever had, because he had zero self-control. And so let's not be like that. We definitely shouldn't be cussing anybody out, but let's make sure that we have the self-control that we need when we're leading, not only just in the church and leading others, but when we're with our own family. Compassion. So here's compassion. Proverbs 29:14 says, if a king judges the poor with fairness, his throne will always be secure. And Jesus is the ultimate model of taking time for the poor, the outcast, and children. And he was naturally drawn to the weak who needed an advocate. That is why James teaches us that pure religion is to look after orphans and widows in their distress. That is like, I guess, one of the ultimate things is because, and Jesus he was compassionate to the poor, the outcast. Nobody wanted that. Those were the people that nobody wanted to deal with, and those are the people he went to. But we have to have that compassion. With our self-control, we need to have that compassion, that love. Love and compassion are the same thing, but we have to have, like, man, I love you. I'm here for you. I'm sorry you're in this situation, but let's figure out a way to get out of this situation. Let's figure out a way to be there. Not feel sorry for them and then walk away from them, but have that compassion to say, you know what? We're going to get in this together. You're a brother, you're a sister in Christ. We're going to figure this out together. We're going to get through it together. A leader needs to have no need for public approval. Proverbs 29:25 says, fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. The greatest freedom is having nothing to prove and no one to impress. Good leaders are more concerned about pleasing God than their popularity with others. Their desire for honor among men makes trusting God almost impossible. The leader who has his eyes on receiving the praise of men is not focused on obeying and pleasing God. And I can say that about Pastor Buffman. He is not here to make anybody outside of this church. He's not here to raise eyebrows and, man, look at Terry Boffman over there in Gilbert. Man, look what he's doing. He's not about that. He's not seeking public approval. Pastor and Sister Boffman, their sole duty is to help us to make it to heaven. That is their sole concern right now in building a church, a building. That is their sole concern. But he's not out, look at me, look at me, look at me. I've never known him to be like that. And the people that are like that are the most blessed because they have their hearts in the right position. They have their hearts in the right place because all their desire is to help us to make it to heaven. Whether being a youth pastor or we don't do that. We don't get a leadership position. Hey, look at what I am. I'm in leadership at Life Church, Gilbert, Arizona. I'm here to be a servant, to serve you guys, to do whatever I can to be a blessing to the church, to the congregation. That's what a leader is. We don't look for outside approval. I remember one time, and in general, you don't look for outside approval, for something great you've done. I remember somebody told me one time, if you do something really, really good, and somebody says, man, you did a great job, you just give God the glory. Oh, it was all Jesus, because it is. And I say that a lot, because if I do something good, it wasn't me. Man, I'm aloof, like I'm just a Loposaurus Rex sometimes. I don't know what I'm doing. And so if I do something really good, or if I have a blessing to you, it wasn't anything I said or did, it was God working through me. And I give God the praise and all the glory for that because it was him. And if I mess up, it was my fault. I remember one time, the first time we did the harvest party a few years ago, I said, if this goes really, really great, it was Ashley's idea. And she could tell, if it goes really bad, I guess it's my fault. We'll blame somebody else, But ultimately, if things go good, we need to have the integrity and the honor and the humility to thank God for that, because it wasn't anything we did. It was something God did. But I think the last main key to leadership is humility. The key to leadership is having an attitude of humility. Rather than focusing on our ambitions and our own interests, Paul suggests that we first consider the interest of others. And I just realized I skipped half a page, and so I apologize. But humility is, and we're going to get back to that. But God decides when to advance us. So God first puts us under a leadership, puts us under some sort of a leader, but then God figures out when he's going to advance us. Someone has said timing is everything, but obviously timing is important to God, for he exercises perfect timing. Don't worry about when you're going to get moved up in leadership. Don't worry about when you're going to get moved up into a different position. God's going to figure that out. God will mark that. Don't Don't get upset. Don't get frustrated with it. God knows what he's doing. God's speaking through people, and you're going to get to the position that God feels that you need to be in, the perfect place that for you. But God's timing is the perfect timing, and God will work that out. Don't get frustrated. You're under somebody for a reason, and they're going to figure out where you need to go when the time is right. Amen. God will place us where he needs us. So not only will he advance you, but he'll place you where you need you. You may not know. And your I don't know is your final destination. You always say, I don't know. Well, that's where you're going to end up. You're going to end up in the I don't know. So don't worry about that. God will place you where you're supposed to be. And God will empower us. Joshua had to be a little intimidated, even knowing God had called him and was preparing him for a momentous leadership role. To be thrust into the fore of about 2 million, right off the bat, he's being thrown into some military battle. Moses is gone, and now he's going to be doing this kind of stuff, but be thrown into this and organizing a force that could pull off a massive military victory should be a daunting task. However, God did not call Joshua because the man thought he could do it. He called Joshua because Joshua would allow divine empowerment to work through him. In the book of Joshua, chapter 1, verses 5 through 7, says, there shall not be any man be able to stand before thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. Be strong and of good courage, for unto this people shalt thou divide for an inheritance, the land which I swear unto the fathers to give them. Only be thou strong and very courageous, that thou mayest observe to be according to all the law, which Moses my servant commanded thee. God told him, don't worry about it. I got it handled. You were under Moses for a season so you can learn how to be a good leader, and I'm not going to put you in a situation that you can't face by yourself. You're going to be okay. I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to be there to take care of you, to get you through this. And God will empower you to do a good job. God will empower you, give you the right words to say, give you the right attitude to deal with people. God will empower you, but you have to seek it. You have to pray. You have to fast. You have to seek after God to get that empowerment from him. And once you receive that empowerment, you may have little trials here and there being a leader. I imagine, as Pastor and Sister Boffin probably do, but it's not nearly as hard because you got God leading you and God talking to you and God speaking to you. And so God will empower us. But then, sorry, and I apologize, we'll get back to this, but I think the main key to leadership is humility. The key to leadership is having an attitude of humility rather than focusing on our ambitions and our own interests. Paul suggests that we consider the interest of others. In Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 through 4, it says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look not only to your own interest, but also to the interest of others. The church needs a new kind of leader, a leader that is willing to serve God, a leader that's willing to serve not only God, but be able to serve others, to be a servant, to have that spirit of humility about them, to be that leader, to spend the valuable time in prayer with God and saying, God, I'm nothing without you. I can't do this without you. And we have to have that spirit of humility within us. Vance Harbor wrote, a leader is a person with a magnet in his heart and a compass in his head. This is especially true for those who lead in the church. The magnet in their heart pulls them to a deeper relationship with God, and the compass lets them perceive the directions of God and his purpose in their lives and the lives of those they are leading. If we have that right spirit, we have that right spirit of humility, that right spirit, and all those other traits I was talking about, integrity, compassion, love, and we seek after God, we'll be able to be the leaders that we're supposed to be. And I mentioned earlier, there are people in the church that maybe you don't think you have leadership capabilities. But I'm pretty sure that if you stood up and you went to Pastor Sister Boffin, I want to do more, they'll find something for you to do. They'll give you a task or something to do, to find you, to give you a job, to give you an opportunity to show you that you can do something for the kingdom of God. But we have to have those traits. I want to end with this last video. I guess I'll be able to get to it, Justin. And this is a great example of humility. It's a sport analogy, so that I apologize for. Now, I'm not a huge football fan. But I've been watching something on the Dallas Cowboys and about their last season that they just played, and they lost. But one of their players, Jason Witten, was their tight end for like 13 or 14 years. He's one of the best tight ends to ever play the game. When he retired, he was the fourth on the list of all-time receptions, catches in the NFL. And Jason Garrett. So Jason Witten's on the right, and Jason Garrett is on the left-hand side, and that's his coach. And this was just a very good example of what a leader is and how they taught humility in their role. And so I just give you it's about 4 minutes long. And I showed this to Ashley last night, and she's like, nobody's going to understand what's going on. But then I found a different video that actually explains what they're talking about. But when it gets to the end of it, I think you'll understand. So go ahead, Justin.
In 2015 in training camp, we asked some of our veteran players, our best players, our leaders, to make presentations to the team at our night meetings. And so Whit went first, and we talked about it. He said, hey, I want to talk about Y option. This is his play, signature play. He's got over 1,100 catches. Probably half of them are on Y option. For those of you guys who are here, who are in the room, you remember what I'm talking about. It was simply the greatest presentation I've ever seen in football. He talked about his stance, where his weight is, where his hand is, how he releases versus defender, inside or outside, based on his alignment. He talked about the number of steps he takes, the guy's inside leverage or outside leverage, how he runs the routes. He talked about his eyes, his shoulders, his hips, his feet, the angle he's taking coming out, what he's doing with the ball after he catches it. It was just like nothing I'd ever seen. He finishes the presentation with a clip. It was a clip of one play from the previous season.
Romo over the middle. He's got Witten. Witten down inside the 25.
We played Detroit in the playoff game at our stadium, and the situation was 4th and 6 with just over 6 minutes to go in the game. We were down by 3. We're on the plus 42-yard line. This is the play of the game. We called Y option. Detroit plays two-man. Two-man means they're going to rush 4, have 2 deep safeties, and all the cover guys can play underneath their man because they got help. If you look back on it, Y option is probably not a great call versus two-man. If you run Y option 100 times versus this look, 95 times the option is to break out. So Witten, who knows this play better than anybody on the planet, gets up to the top of the route. He feels the defender sink underneath him and play to the outside. He puts his right foot in the ground, gives a little head nod, circles back inside. Romo moves, delivers a strike between the 8 and the 2. Witt turns up the field, 21-yard gain. 6 plays later, Romo to Terrence Williams for a touchdown, the game winner. So Witt takes the next couple minutes talking about what he saw and what he felt. It was great. But then he stops, and he says, I'll tell you why this play really worked. And he said, I want you to look at Dez Bryant here. He's our ex-receiver. They play two-man for one reason. Dez Bryant. You need a guy underneath, they need a guy on top. Dez Bryant's one of the best receivers in the National Football League. He deserves that attention. Then he talked about the offensive line, Tyron Smith and his set, and how he used his hands and where his eyes were, and how he punched and scratched and clawed and fought. He talked about Ron Leary, our left guard, Travis Frederick, Zach Martin working inside, working together, passing things off, scratching, clawing, fighting until the end of the down. Talked about Jeremy Parnell, our right tackle, his set, and how he was battling to somehow keep the rusher away from Romo. He talked about Cole Beasley and Terrence Williams taking outside releases, turning the defender's eyes away from him and running the safety off so he'd be isolated. He talked about DeMarco Murray, his protection assignment, running a swing, get that linebacker out of there so I can break inside. Then he talked about Romo, the greatness of Romo, his toughness, mental toughness, physical toughness, his instincts, his awareness to kind of hang in there with him. It all came alive on 4th and 6. Romo slid, threw it between the 8 and the 2, and he went. So it struck me that this play, his signature play, where he made it at the critical moment, he didn't make it about him. He did what he always does. He makes it about everybody else. He made it about the team.
They said, and again, I'm not a huge football fan. I had no idea what a Y option was. So I'm glad I found this video because it explained everything about it. But Jason Witten, one of the greatest tight ends in the history of football, he'll be a Hall of Famer for sure. But what they said was that it was a 30-minute presentation. And Jason Garrett, I don't know if he said it, but he said it was one of the greatest presentations that I've ever seen since being in the NFL. He's been in the NFL for over 20 years. And the whole point was that this play was really about how awesome of a catch he made and how he got his team forward. But what Jason did was, Witt did, he made it about everybody else around him. How it made everybody else look, how it made Dez Bryant look so respected because he did not have one, but he had two guys guarding him. He's like, look how great the offensive line is keeping the quarterback protected, and look how great they're doing it, and then look how great the wide receivers are doing, keeping the safety's attention off of me, and he made it all about everybody else. Even though he was the one who made the catch, and he called the play, he made it about every single other player on the field except for him. And a great leader never makes it about himself. A great leader never makes it about, look what I did. He makes it about everybody else. He wants everybody else to look good around him. So I think that was an amazing attribute, and to see the coach, how choked up he was because how selfless Witt was in that presentation and about how he made it about everybody else. I mean, I thought it was in a tough sport like football to see a head coach get that emotional about it. I thought it was really neat. But what it showed how great of a leader that guy was on the field. He was a captain for I don't know how many years on the Dallas football team, but that he made it about everybody else, wanted everybody else to look good, give everybody else an opportunity to be great. And I thought that was really, really awesome. Why don't we stand? So we're going to pray real quick. And I pray that if we ought to be good leaders. Even if you don't hold a position in the church as a leader, we ought to be good leaders at home and be good leaders at work. And like I said, everywhere we go, because we're Christians, we're representatives of Jesus Christ. And we need to have those character traits, but we need to have this ability that we can lead. And so if you feel like you're lacking in an rise why don't we pray right now and just ask God to open up those, help us understand where we're lacking and help us to get to where we need to be. But why don't we just rise up to the occasion, rise up to be leaders in our community, rise up to be leaders at work and everywhere we go, so that wherever we go, we could be a blessing to others and lead people to Christ, because that is the ultimate goal. Lord, I love you. I worship you. I thank you, Lord, for this opportunity to talk about you, to speak about attributes, good Christian attributes. But God, I pray that for the leaders, Lord, that are within the church already, and for the leaders that are